Hey, what's going on? And welcome to the FiYA Conversations podcast. This is a show where we'll wrestle with various topics relevant to our faith walk with Jesus. Don't forget to subscribe so you can catch each new episode. In these conversations, we'll discuss who we are in Christ and how to live a victorious Christian life according to the Word of God and the power of the Holy Spirit. FiYA is an acronym that means faith and yielding action. Here at the FiYA community, we desire to match our faith in Jesus Christ with actions that glorify Him, as is written in James chapter 2, verses 14 through 18. We also drop several new videos a month on our YouTube channel, so you can check us out at youtube.com/@FiYA That's FiYA community. All right, thank you for joining us for another FiYA Conversation. Today we have a special guest. His name is Robert J. Hunt, and he's going to share some important principles that followers of Jesus need to know, especially those who are in business. And so there's a lot of different interpretations that people have of what it means to be a business person and what it means to be a follower of Jesus. And so it's always awesome to hear about the connection between the two. So Robert, thank you for coming on today.
Hey, my pleasure. I love talking about this.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, so I have a lot of different questions for you. But the main thing that I would like for us to start with, just so that people can get to know you a little bit in your background, can you tell us how you came to know Jesus?
Yeah, I grew up in the church in Southern California, and I went to church all the time, and I knew about the Bible. I knew of Jesus. I was married at that church and led a Sunday school class and was doing all the things that on the outside looked pretty good. But I would take my clients to nudie bars and I would party with them. And I had this other life of mine that was in the business world that I thought I had to behave a certain way. And God forbid these two people ever met anywhere. The people from my church would bump into the people I worked with. And it wasn't until I was 31. And so that was 1994. I went to a Promise Keepers rally in Angel Stadium in California. And everybody was saying all this stuff and all excited about Jesus. And I was thinking, I don't really even know Jesus. I just know of him. I don't really know him. And so that day I surrendered my heart to Christ and completely gave up everything that I was holding back on and really felt at that point I was redeemed. I probably was saved before. I probably, if I died, wouldn't have gone to hell. Only God knows that. But he was not the Lord of my life. And he became the Lord of my life in May of 94. And it was at that point I really experienced what it's like to surrender and walk with Christ. And it's been a long journey. That's a lot of years ago. Oh golly, that's 30 years ago. And God has taken me through so many things, but all through it all, I have felt his presence and his hand in my life and really know what it's like to walk with him.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I know that you mentioned just, being, you were, exposed to things of Christ kind of like early on, but were there any really like pivotal moments where you said this, like there are people who can say, yes, I have experience of growing up in the church and, just being a part of a lot of like cultural Christian things. But was there ever a time in your life where you really felt like, you know what, I want to just go to another level, just deeper in my relationship with God.
I don't think I cared. I thought I was going to church and I was okay. And, I think for the longest time, I felt like that was it. And it really wasn't until I surrendered my heart to Jesus and really felt what it was like to commune with God. A lot of people know about Jesus, they know about the Bible, but it's different to surrender your life to him. And I don't think I really I don't think I cared. I was like, "Well, I'm going to heaven, man. It's all good." But there were an awful lot of times where I just felt like life was kinda meaningless, like Solomon talks about. And I think that, I got busy trying to be a business guy, and nothing wrong with business, but I ended up losing a lot of who I was in trying to be something in the business world that I really wasn't. And in 94, when I really surrendered that, I started looking at the way I behave and I thought, well, this job is here for me to be a light to the world. and to care for my customers and not for me to make money and party. It's for me to be a servant of the Lord at that job. I never viewed it like that. I just figured out, I'm okay, and I'm going on Sundays, and hey, I'm doing fine. So I think that moment was a time where I started to reevaluate my work, my career, friends, everything in the light of, hey, how do I live a life of walking with Jesus and then letting everything else look like I walk with Jesus?
Hmm. Right, right. And that's I think that that is sometimes the thing that can be complicated for a lot of people, although it is simplistic, really. If, the more real God is to you, the more it just flows into everything that you do, right? You don't have to try to
Right.
force it. It's not meant to be that way. And I think that it can seem like that maybe at the beginning because you're
Because there's
trying to
nothing
say,
else.
yeah,
I mean, you just know, give me the list of rules. Let me do that.
right,
But, if you and I are friends, I don't have to teach you how to be my friend.
right,
You just know it. And you know when my birthday is, you know what things I care about. You go, "Hey, dude, the Cowboys are playing tonight. Let's go watch the game." And we know about each other because we hang out and we have life together. And so I think that if you're just gonna go to church and do some kinda mandatory service, you can't earn your way to heaven. And so those little things of punching the clock, they don't do anything for you. They're certainly not impressing God. "Oh, you went to church? Oh." It's
right.
not like that. And I think it's just until we get to this place where we really realize you can have a personal relationship with the God of the universe. Why would you not want that?
Yeah. And, I think that there are people who, when they hear the word service, that can mean a lot of different things to different people, right? And one of the things that I try to challenge myself on all the time, especially with, you know, coming to Christ as a teenager and being kind of in the church world really for the first time at that time and being exposed to a lot of different things, a lot of different church culture, church lingo. And I've come to a place where sometimes I ask myself, why do I use these certain terms? Why do I use these words? And especially sometimes I think about like what do they mean to other people when I say them? So
Yeah, they're
even like
confusing.
the word church or like the term church service, and depending on how you think of it, you could think of, oh, service like customer service. I'm receiving a service, or someone could look at it like service, like serving in the military. I'm serving
Right.
and I'm here doing my duty. I'm clocking in for an hour and a half, 2 hours, right? So the word service, we don't see that in the Bible. Like when we see that the early church met, it didn't say they went to a service at Ephesus. They
Yeah.
went to a service here in Corinth, but it said that
Where
they
these
met
words
together.
these words have become commonplace in the church, and so you'll hear someone, we're coming over on Saturday night to fellowship." And you're like, "Hey, are we gonna hang out, watch a movie?"
Look, no, 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 we're not. Well, we're going to fellowship, but yeah,
Fellowship.
well, isn't that that? Yeah, it's like
Yeah, none of my friends who don't know Jesus get together, "You wanna come over and fellowship this weekend?
right.
No, you wanna hang out?"
Yeah, we're
"No,
gonna
we're
we're gonna
here for
fellowship
work."
during the Super Bowl.
Right, right, right.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't know, that's pretty religious. I'm not really a religious guy. I grew up in a really great church. It was a really, really good church, but it became just kinda mechanical, and I'm not really into any kind of tradition. They are just used to divide us these days.
Mhm.
It's because you don't believe this or that, so I can't go to your church. And it just seems and I'm in Texas. There's a church on every corner. And it just why can't we just merge these 8 churches into one church together? And these guys are barely getting by paying rent. Why don't we all just well, because these guys are Baptists and these guys are Methodists and these guys are oh my gosh, Jesus didn't have divisions like that. We've made it really hard for people to find Jesus.
And you know what? I think that you just brought up a really good point, and it just made me think of how somebody like you, who has really invested, so much of your professional life, but while being a believer in Jesus, into business, understanding the business world. And I think that there are certain principles that you may understand from being in the business world that you can help the general body of Christ, just to incorporate not only in things that relate to business, because I know there's some people watching this or listening to this, and they may say, well, I'm not really interested in business. So they may not see how this could be relevant to them. But I think that something that you're touching on is like, you know, when it comes to just the logistical things of, what it means to get together with people, um, from a financial standpoint, do we need to spend hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars in order to accomplish this thing? Or are there other maybe smarter
Right.
ways to do it, right? So that we're not running into some of these issues like during COVID, right? A lot of churches were not prepared because everything relied on doing things this certain way.
Yeah.
And so, once things were disrupted in that way, some were just said they just said, okay, we're just gonna close the doors, we're just gonna
Shut
give up.
down.
We don't know what to do.
Yeah, our church started offering baby childcare for the emergency workers who had to go to work and they didn't have anywhere to take their kids like they normally would because childcare places had shut down. So our church decided there's a real need here. So we figured out a way to be able to open up our doors Monday through Friday for childcare for the emergency workers. And it was a huge blessing. So I think we gotta be relevant anymore. I mean, Paul was a tent maker. He went and he worked. As a lot of the things you read in Paul's letters, he talks about, "I never took any money off you. I earned my own money. I took care of myself, and I'm proud of that." Well, what makes us think we should be any different? Listen, business is a part of our faith. I
Mhm.
spend more time at work than I do at church. I go to church for a couple hours on Sunday. Well, that's the whole rest of the week is wide open. So
Right.
for me to not live out my faith at work all the time would be weird because this is who I am. So I'm just going to not be part of me 6 days a week. That just seems ridiculous. And we shouldn't have to be all religious and come to work and talk about fellowshipping together. We should just come to work and work hard and care for people and be a light because if we follow the biblical principles that God tells us to live out in the workplace, we are the best employees. We are the kindest employees. We're the hardest working employees. We don't talk gossip and rude about people. We give grace. We show mercy. All this stuff that the Bible tells us to do, do it at work. And then because of the way we work at work, people go, that guy's always so nice. Why is she giving that person a break? And we can have a chance to speak about the hope that we have inside us and how God forgave us. And that's a great place of ministry, 6 days a week, 5 days a week for sure.
Yeah, and I think that that is good, especially for those who are in business like yourself. And you know what? I think that there's this pull sometimes when we think of ministry. And I spoke with someone about this recently, just about the importance of the marketplace ministry and even seeing it as a
Yeah,
ministry.
it
Because
is.
some people feel like, well, you know what? Maybe I should just quit my business, go to Bible college, go to seminary, and serve because that's the only way I can serve the Lord, right? But
Yeah.
what has your experience been as far as that finding that balance, being able to use these opportunities and this gifting and just the interest that you have? How has God been able to use that in your life for ministry?
Yeah, nobody needs to go get a degree to be able to live out your faith at work. Now, maybe you're not a biblical scholar. That's okay. But you speak about what you know and then you continue to grow in your faith. But 5 days a week, you just go and live out your faith at work. And it's a huge testimony. And whenever someone asks you, you get a chance to talk about your faith. But I found that my clients and the people I work with and the vendors that I know and the different people in the business community, they're all going through so much junk. And if we just listen and care and ask them questions and care about them, that right there is above what most people do. Most people just say, "How you doing?" They keep walking. They don't even listen for the answer. But if you actually ask somebody, "Hey, how you doing, man?" And then you listen and you care for them, and then you can't fix their problems, but you can say, "Is it okay if I pray for you about that?"
Right.
"Yeah, let me pray for you right now." It's not to be religious, you genuinely care for them. What's the very best thing I could do for a guy who's out of a job? I could get him a job. Maybe that's not what the best things. The best thing I could do is introduce him to Christ. And through caring for him and saying, "I'm sorry you're frustrated about your job search. Let me pray for you right now." And then you can help him. You can introduce him to someone or encourage him or give him some money if he's hurting financially. All these things you can do. But the number one thing is to direct them to Jesus. And all day long, 5 days a week, we are hanging out with people who don't know Jesus. And that's a great opportunity for just not to go out and be religious and pass out tracts. Just don't suck at your job. Just
Mhm.
be nice at your job. And then because you are doing something that is usually contrary to what most people do, that alone will make people wonder why. Why are you like that? And then you have a chance to introduce them to Jesus.
Yeah, most definitely. Most definitely. Yeah, there's so many opportunities that we have that we may not recognize if we're not looking for them, we're not paying attention.
Mm.
But God puts people and, situations in our life every day.
If you're
Um,
looking,
yeah.
if you're looking. That brings me to a point I wanted to talk about was margin. I don't
Mhm.
know if that's on our agenda or not, but it's on mine. There's a book written by Richard Swenson called Margin, and he talks about why we're overloaded as a world. And we as Christ followers should never be overloaded because we should live a life where God is available to interrupt our life. If you overload your time or your money or your health or your emotions, where does God have the opportunity to interrupt your day? What happens is we overbook our time so much with just so much things to do. Taking the kids to soccer practice, picking them up from choir practice, coming on home, trying to get dinner, run, 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 do all this stuff, and then repeat every day. It's overload. And then when God says, "Hey, stop and go visit your neighbor because she's lonely tonight," and God puts it on our heart, we'll go, "Well, I can't do it today. I'll try tomorrow."
Right.
But it was tonight that she needed to hear from you, but you didn't leave room in your life for God to interrupt you. And then
Mhm.
God says, "Hey, take some of your money and I want you to give it to this family because they're hurting." And you're looking at your own budget going, "Dude, I'm overloaded myself. I'm barely making minimum payments on my credit card. How can I take money and give it to someone else when I can barely take care of myself?" Because I haven't learned to live within a margin where God can take some of my money and use it somewhere else. That 10% you give as a tithe, that's the minimum. That is the thing we do out of honoring the Lord. The other 90% still belongs to the Lord. He's just letting you use it the way you want to use it. But if he says, "Hey, take some of this money, give graciously," when you don't have any extra money because you're already in debt, God doesn't get to interrupt your finances or your health when you stay up late watching Netflix instead of getting some sleep, or you abuse your body where you don't have the energy to be able to be healthy at work and your mind is overwhelmed and your emotions are maxed out. How does God have the right to interrupt your life if you're on overload? And I don't think that's living a life that's available for God, and we do it all the time. Very popular these days.
Yeah, and I think that it's difficult to break away from having a self-serving mentality, right?
Yeah.
Especially when, unfortunately, there are within some churches, in order to get people to be motivated to give money and things like that, they don't say like what you said, like, okay, there might be somebody in need and they just need something, and that's why. But it's like, no, if you give this, then God will do this for you, a transactional thing.
Yeah.
And it kind of missed the purpose of it. Like, so if they think, okay, I'm doing this so I can get something in return.
No, you missed the point.
Yeah.
Now, I do believe that there is a reward for obedience, and the Bible does talk about you will reap what you sow. So if I sow tomatoes, I don't get corn. So if I sow with my money a giving spirit, there will be a giving spirit back to me in money. So there is a principle of returning on what I'm giving, but we don't give graciously. You know, that 10% you give as a tithe, God's providing you that money through all kinds of things like your dishwasher not breaking down or your car not breaking down. That's his way of saving you that 10% you gave. But there's other ways to use that 90% of that money in a way that's being able to glorify the Lord. But we spend it all ourselves. And then there's no ability to give graciously. So I think we miss that opportunity of really being able to see where God is moving in our lives because we're living on overload.
Now, this could be for some people, it can be difficult because there are some people who have been maybe hurt by churches or have felt manipulated or exploited in some ways, especially when it comes to money, which is why money can be a very touchy thing
Yeah.
for believers to talk about, right? So when it comes to to giving, whether it's a tithe or an offering, do you believe that it is possible to, let's just say someone wants to give the specific 10% or the tithe? Do you believe that it's possible to give that, say, to, let's say, a person on the street that needs money, or do you think that that 10% specifically has to go to a local church or ministry organization?
You know, I'm not a biblical expert to know what that is required of. It says to give it to the church. It says we're supposed to take that to our church, to the temple. We're supposed to give it as a sacrifice to the Lord. Now, if you decide to use it to give it to someone else and you do it with a spirit of obedience to God, that's between you and God. I don't think we need to be telling each other what to do with our lives. But I do think there's a lot of times we justify something that, if I get this boat, I can take out my heathen neighbors on the weekend and I can witness to them
Mhm.
by drinking light beer, you know? And these things that we just kind of create in our minds. So I couldn't begin to tell people how to spend their money or to how to use money to please the Lord. But I think God will tell you in your own heart what you should do with the money he gives you. My beautiful wife, Kathy, and I, we got to a place where we were really heavy in debt, and God did not have any room to interrupt our lives. We were $90,000 in debt, and it was choking out our lives. And I remember having people say, "I'm going on a mission trip. Can you, support me?" I'd be like, "Dude, there's no money. I'm so screwed. I can't write you a check for anything." And I put God in a place because of my bad choices where I couldn't be used by him. And I knew that was wrong. He was letting me make a ton of money, and I just squandered it. I just used it on me, and I used it foolishly. So I knew that was wrong. And you have to get to a place where you decide that I want to look at how I'm taking everything I have and use it as investment for the kingdom. If I have time, how do I invest that? It doesn't mean you go on a full-time mission trip and you never go back to work. It means at work, you're on a mission trip. So when that jerk customer calls, you give grace and mercy. When that annoying employee comes in your office, you stop and you listen to them. These are the things we can use for God's glory. It's not just money, it's our time, talent, and treasure. And so if I've got the ability to serve someone, I go clean their backyard when they're old and sick and they can't do it on their own, great. If I go and help a company grow and help them be successful, and then they can hire more people, then great. If you really are seeking the Lord with all your heart, you will know when these opportunities come up. God will bring them to you. But like you said earlier, if you're not looking around, you're not aware of the things he's doing, you miss it because
Mhm.
you're all about you and what I want. I'm just trying to cover my stuff. But I've put God in a box where he can't interrupt my life because I've maxed myself out. So there is no room for him to interrupt. I've lived like that before. I don't want that for people.
I think that this leads into one of the main things that I would like to discuss with you because, they call you the accountability guy,
Yeah.
right? So when it comes to accountability in business, like what is that exactly?
Mm. Hey, accountability, the simplest definition of accountability is you own it. And I think it applies to us as Christ followers, I think more than other people, because the Bible says we will be accountable to God for the life we live. That means I don't know how it's going to work, but Sunday we're going to go to heaven and we're going to stand before God and he's going to review everything we did, good and bad. The people who don't know Jesus, they're just gonna go to hell. Sad as that is, but
Mhm.
I don't know if there'll be a review of their lives. They just will be in hell, so that sucks enough. But for us, at some point, we are gonna be accountable to God. And I think it's foolishness to not proactively live the life that you could live to bring glory to God when He's told you, "You're gonna stand before me, I'm gonna review all this." I don't know why that principle is not a big deal to people. Like, well, that's something in the future. Well, the time you're doing stuff right now is part of that's what's gonna get reviewed. Your death might be 20 years from now, but you're still gonna have that review, and I don't know how it's gonna work, but I don't wanna stand there in front of Jesus. I already got enough junk that He's gonna review that I'm not gonna be thrilled about. I don't wanna have anything more that I end up looking at ashamed or how it's gonna work, I don't know, but it says it's gonna be done. So we're accountable. So at the end of the day, you need to own it. You need to own your life, the way you live your life, the way you spend your time, the way you spend your money, how you treat people, all that stuff, you need to own it. But we as a society have become very comfortable, and I'll add to that the word society, the church, that we're very comfortable blaming or making excuses for why we do stuff or saying we can't or just wait and hope maybe next year I could do it. Maybe next year I'll change this. Those 4 traps are what we outline in our book, Nobody Cares Until You Do. And it's this principle of accountability we're trying to teach everyone, including the church, that if you're gonna be accountable, you need to own it. You need to own your life, your money, your marriage, your health, your kids, your faith, every bit of your life, you need to own it. And don't blame and don't make excuses and don't say you can't and don't wait and hope. That's what Kathy and I did for those years where we let our debt get higher and higher and higher till we had $90,000 in debt. And in 2019, we just said, "Look, we can't do this anymore. We gotta change our lives. We are not being accountable for the life we live." And we blamed and we made excuses and we said there's nothing we can do about it, or we waited and hoped that we get better next year. And it just got worse and worse every year. Until 2019, we decided we're gonna sell our house and start over. And so we put our house in the market and we sold it by March of 2020. and we moved into this house that we rent today. And we used all that money to pay off all the debt, and we're debt free. And
Mm,
to me, that was an amazing time of freedom because then I said to the Lord, okay, now you can do whatever you want because I don't have any burdens. I don't have any worries. And he could take me to do this or that. And any money we earned, we could use graciously and freely to be able to use it any way we want. We weren't saddled with debt, but we had to own it. It was that turning moment. It was that moment we realized, hey, nobody cares if I'm broke and stressed and unhappy unless I care enough to do something about it. And that's what the whole book is about.
mm. Wow. And I wanna come back to the book in just a moment. There's one other thing that you mentioned, and it made me think about something that you said earlier, where you were talking about relationships that we have in the natural with people. Like when you have a relationship with a person, you don't have to say, like you said, you don't say things like, "Let me, teach you like how to be my
How to be
friend
my
or
friend.
whatever."
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Yeah.
But I also thought about like when you talked about standing before Jesus, right? When he reviews our lives, um, at that moment, right? We have to spend more time really thinking that this is a real thing. Like this is going to happen.
Yeah.
Not a maybe, but this is definitely going to happen. So
Yeah.
I think with in our natural relationships, we know that there are certain consequences. Like, if somebody's married, they know that okay, if they just go around, committing
You know, they
adultery,
owe sinners and whistles and buried.
yeah, doing whatever they want, eventually, right? That's not going to help the relationship at all. That's
You know,
just
I don't
gonna,
think so. I don't think this world anymore realizes their actions have consequences. And you could figure out probably if you did enough research or talked about it, maybe social media has created this world of fake behaviors. I can get on social media and swear and say horrible things about you and just walk away. What are you going to come to my house and punch me in the face? I'm sure there are people who do that, but in most
right,
cases, you get away with it, right?
right.
And I think we've got to a place where we don't have any consequences for our actions. And so if you get heavy in debt, "Oh, file bankruptcy." You're not so much in love with your spouse, "Oh, I'll just get another one."
Mhm.
Yeah, all these things that don't work out, we just kinda throw them away. We don't own it. That's
Yeah.
accountability. But at the simplest version of that is that you just have to look at your life and say, "What do I want my life to look like? And am I pursuing that? Am I doing that?" I gotta
Mhm.
own that. I gotta own that whole thing that's on me.
Yeah, and I think having the perspective of seeing Jesus as not just this far away cosmic being, but seeing him as a real person or, a real God man, however you want to,
Yeah,
imagine him, right? Like he's real. He's not
right.
just a Bible story. So, when we think about cultivating that relationship with him, we have to think, yeah, everything I do impacts that relationship in some way,
Yeah,
right?
and that's also the aspect of accountability that we don't think about. There's a difference between responsibility and accountability. Responsibility means I did something or that I own the consequence, like I'll take the blame. But accountability means I proactively did something to get the result I'm looking for. If you screw up and you take the blame, you're responsible for that. But if you step back and say, okay, what do I want my marriage to look like? And then I proactively do the things that are gonna get me the marriage that I want at the end, I'm accountable for the actions, the life, the journey I'm taking, and that's the difference. I don't want people to do something, I want them to do the thing. I want them to do the thing that's required to be able to be a good husband or wife, the thing that's required to be a good parent. Because, uh, everything that seems to be like if it doesn't work out, it'll just be someone else's problem. You know, most people aren't ready to retire by the time they get to retirement age. The IRS says that over 50% of the people in America, when they get to an age where they can no longer work, will have to have someone else provide for them till they're dead. Well, you got how many years to plan for your retirement? 50 years? You've had 50 years to figure out that you need to make money to take care of yourself, and you're still broke and needing someone to provide for you till you die. That's just a great example of how we just are not taking it serious, that we're accountable to do something along the way to get us to where we wanna be. Same things with our faith. If you wanna walk with Jesus, you wanna be a light of the world, and you wanna be able to be honorable before the Lord, you might try reading the Bible once in a while. You might actually have a friend that you can be honest with and share your struggles so they can encourage you to be your best. You might seek counseling. You might have honest conversations with people you don't get along with. These are the proactive things we do to generate the life that we want at the end, but it's intentional. And I think for some reason we just unplug and just go, "I'll get through one day at a time.
Right.
It'll suck, but I'll get through one day." Man, that's not owning it, that's surviving it.
Mm. Yeah, and as you were talking before about how you had to make the decision to sell your house. I think that that was a perfect example of that combination of accountability and responsibility, right? And I think that that is difficult for a lot of people because some may look at that as giving up. Like they'll say, "I'll do anything as long as we don't lose the house," right? Because that it means the actual physical location means more to them than some of the other things
Yeah.
that you're talking about. The freedom that can come from maybe just saying, maybe this just isn't it for right now. Maybe God has a different house.
Well, let's switch that word from house to, relationship or job, or anything out there. Anything that comes between you and God is an idol. Kathy and I spent so much time either trying to figure out how to get by with the debt we had or how to make more money. That's all we ever talked about. It's all I ever worried about. I got to make more money, got to make more money. Instead of just changing how much we spent, we could have stopped that trend 5 years before we got screwed. But instead, we just said, got to make more money, got to make more money. But if you're saying, I'll do anything except the house, that has become an idol to you. I'll do anything except break up with this person that is really bad for me. This
Mhm.
person causes me to do really stupid things. This friend is a bad influence on my life. I'll do anything except lose that. Anything that you're saying except that is an idol. And we're not supposed to have idols. It's I spent all my time thinking about my money or the lack of it. That was an idol to us. And he came between us and God. We blamed him. We were mad at him. And that really affected the way we saw God. And we were really hurt that he wasn't fixing our problems, the ones that we created. But he didn't have to fix them. We created them. I
Right.
mean, that's the kind of thing we do where we have this twisted perspective of who owns the problem.
Yeah. Yeah. And so on the topic of accountability, right? In the business world and in church culture, the word accountability is used a lot. So in business, it's like, okay, hey, you have an accountability partner, somebody who's going to say, hey, are you working on your business today? Or let's say someone is self-employed. Are you sticking to your schedule or are you watching Netflix? Right.
Right.
And
Right.
then also in Christian culture, it could be like, hey, how are you doing with your walk with the Lord?
Right.
How are you doing with not, engaging in certain things I know that you mentioned you might struggle with, right? So
Yeah.
in that sense, I think that accountability uh it's needed, right? But one thing that you're quoted as saying is nobody can hold anybody accountable.
Yeah.
You can only
Yeah.
hold yourself accountable if you want to. So
Right.
tell me about the um the connection between those two things, right? Like if someone says, "Hey, this is my accountability partner," and
Yeah,
so
which is
that's
fine to
fine.
have. It's the expectation of what that person does for you. When you have accountability partner, you're expecting them to call you and to kinda hunt you down and to go, "Hey, man, are you watching porn?" "Oh, no, no." You could lie to him though. So if the person says, "Are you watching porn?" You go, "No, I'm not." You lied. He didn't hold me accountable. He
Mhm.
asked me a question, but I'm the only one that can hold myself accountable. So no one can hold anyone accountable for anything. But if I want to, I can invite an accountability partner to walk the journey with me that I drive my accountability. I should call them. Hey, it was a great day. I did a great job. I didn't go on the computer at all last night.
Mhm.
Hey, I'm doing really good with my wife. Hey, I'm fixing this. Hey, I'm working on this. I'm reading my Bible. You chase them because they're willing to give you a place to talk about. One of the things about accountability is it's not done well alone. Accountability requires vulnerability to somebody who you can trust to say, man, I owe $90,000 in debt and I don't know how to get out of debt. I didn't tell anyone that. Think I'm gonna tell my clients I can't manage my finances and I got $90,000 in debt? You think they're gonna hire me to do business with them? I look like an idiot. So I wouldn't tell anybody, and it just got worse and worse and worse. We didn't tell our family members because they might think we were irresponsible, which we were. So, there's no
Mhm.
accountability unless you want accountability. So when we decided that we wanted to own it, part of our journey was telling people when we put a for sale sign out front and the neighbors would walk by, they go, "Oh, you guys are moving?" "Yeah, we owe $90,000 in debt, so we're selling our house to get out of debt." And they looked at us like with shock, like, "Wow." I go, "Well, that's the honest truth." And it was part of me owning it was to be willing to talk and be vulnerable that I screwed up. And it's like when you go to an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting, they have you stand up and say, "Hey, my name's Robert. I'm an alcoholic." And they want you to declare it because you got to own it. And maybe you're only declared to a few people in that room, but that's more than you were doing before when you hit it. And so I think this is the thing that we have to really do is if you want accountability, it starts to God. We're truly only accountable to God and then to ourselves. And if you want to invite someone in your journey to be part of that, they can be the person you walk with, but it's still all on you.
Right, right. Because yeah, because someone could say, "Oh, my accountability partner didn't call me today, so I guess I
That's
can't."
blame or that's excuse, right?
Right.
Oh, it's their fault that I screwed up because they didn't call me. I was
Mhm,
going to do it, but he didn't call me. Yeah, we see this, how stupid this is, but we do it all the time.
mhm.
We do it all the time. So there's 4 traps: blame, make excuse, say you can't, or wait and hope. And if you're doing any of those things when it comes to your journey, you're not owning it.
So, why do you think that people have such a hard time with accountability? Right? There's a lot of people that say, "Of course, I want to hold myself accountable and be accountable and all this," but practically in real life, I just don't know how to.
Well, I think part of it is they think they're already being accountable. But again, back to that responsible versus accountable. If I go to work, I'm being accountable. No, you're being responsible. You get a paycheck, that's the trade-off for going to work.
Mhm.
That's being responsible. If you don't show up for work, then you're not being responsible. But going to work and just doing an okay job and complaining and talking crap about other people and not trying hard because your boss is a jerk and they don't deserve it. They're all making a bunch of money. Why do I care about this company? These are all the excuses and lies that you tell yourself as to why you don't care and you don't try well. That because your attitude's so bad, you never get a chance to be promoted at the company because you're just so negative. But you blame your boss. He never promotes me. Well, you just sit there and complain about everything.
Mhm.
And so we have to realize that just doing something is not doing the thing that is required. So I just don't think people are even aware of what it really means to be proactively accountable. You
Yeah.
want a good marriage? You proactively create it. You want godly children? You proactively create that. You can't guarantee the results, but if you're not working towards it, it will never happen.
Mm. Yeah. So being proactive, right? So that's a big part of accountability.
It
Uh,
is. That's the way that's why we have people take a satisfaction assessment in our book, where we have them at the beginning of the book take an assessment that says, "How satisfied are you in your personal, professional life?" And then in light of this report that you give yourself, you go, "Well, I'm not happy with my marriage. I'm not happy with my health. I'm not happy with my job. Okay, now what are you gonna do about it?" And then honestly answer, "Well, I don't know." And whatever your answer is, you can find where you make excuse or blame or say you can't or that you wait and hope. And we walk you through these principles in the book just to become aware of where you're keeping yourself as a victim, whereas you could be victorious, especially those of us in Christ. We're victorious in Christ. And through the power of God, we can do all things. When Christ gives us the ability, we can do all things. But we put him in a box by already saying there's nothing I can do about it and then not being available to where he's moving in our lives and we don't own it. Yeah, you're gonna stay where you're at. That's a
yeah.
big difference.
And I think you said it. You said it, the H word, right? The big word is honest, right? If a person is not honest, then accountability, I don't see how that can start,
It
right? Because
doesn't.
yeah, but like you said, you had people, there were times that you did need somebody, but
Yeah,
to actually admit, like, okay, I don't have it all figured out, or you know what,
right.
we are struggling right now. That I think that's the hardest part because it's like admitting, like, I'm failing.
Yeah.
I'm not doing as well as I made it seem, and that can be, I think, really difficult for people.
It's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy because our whole church, no one's really being real. No one's walking around really acknowledging the struggles they have and the problems they have. So you don't wanna go to church and go, "Oh, I'm all screwed up," because everyone else seems to have it all together. They
Yeah.
don't, but they seem like that. And I guess on one hand, there's a certain amount of decorum that just says you don't go to church and go, "Oh, I'm really screwed up."
Mhm.
There's some amount of things that we're there to worship the Lord and to encourage one another. But at some point in your life, you got to be real. And that's why you get in a small group at your church with a bunch of people you can walk life with and you can talk and be real and share your journey with each other. But if you're not going to be honest with yourself, you'll never be honest with other people. And so it starts really with you first owning it and being really willing to admit to yourself, I screwed up. And we all screw up. Everybody screws up. There's nobody who's got it together. But if you want to keep your junk to yourself, it just becomes a cancer inside of you and it holds you back as a victim. When you finally get to a place in your life when you realize, wait, nobody cares
Mhm.
till I care enough to do something about it. That is the turning point. And that's why we named the book Nobody Cares Until You Do. And it's at that point when you go, okay, now here's what I want to do. And there's a whole lot of people who will help you if you be real and really share where you're at. Other people will come alongside you and support you, but you got to be real.
Yeah. And I want you to also speak to leaders for a moment because I think that this is becoming more and more of a problem as we see. It seems like every day there's somebody else that comes out and it's like, oh, this person has been involved in some kind of moral public failure. There's
Yeah.
some kind of scandal because of
Yeah.
something that happened 20 years ago or whatever. And then all of a sudden now it's come up and people have been trying to hide it because they were a leader and they feel like,
Yeah.
well, I can't admit to this because I'm this person that everyone looks to. So I think that that can be one of the dangers of leadership or even just having a certain level of success is that you can be so afraid of losing that you want to hide certain things. So what do you say to somebody who's in that situation who says, yeah, I'm ready. I want to be honest. I want to be accountable, but I know that doing that means that there's going to be some other consequences.
Sure. I guess you have to go back to what's your purpose in life? Who do you serve? At the end of my life, I'm going to leave everything I've done here behind and I'm going to be accountable to the Lord. And there's a great story, the parable of the talents, where Jesus says that these guys had a chance to take what he'd given them and give them a good return. I don't want to, I don't want to waste the life God's already given me. And I think if you really are honest with yourself and everyone else, the world's pretty screwed up. I don't know anyone who's got it together. What are you worried about? I mean, yeah, pastors fall from grace, but that's because they put themselves up as better and perfect. And I don't follow any pastor into heaven. I follow Jesus. And every pastor I've ever met has issues, man. The more you get to know them, the more you find out they got issues because they're human and humans have issues. So let's not put our hope in any one person other than Jesus. But if you want an excuse as to why you don't go to church anymore, because it's all full of hypocrites and that pastor's full of himself, fine. There's plenty of excuses or blame to go
Mhm.
around. But excuse me, if you want to own the fact that you've been burned and screwed over by past people in the church, okay, own it. Now, focus on who Jesus is. He has not screwed you over. Focus on who God is. He is full of grace and mercy and love. And get over the fact that you've been treated poorly by some other human. We're all broken. We've all screwed over somebody. Everybody. All have fallen short of the glory of God. And so there's no big mystery that people are behaving poorly. Don't let that hold you back from being who you want to be. Just continue to seek after who Jesus is. He's the only person you can hold up into that light of perfection.
Yeah. Yeah. And that I think that's the biggest thing that I think if more not only leaders understood that about themselves, but others who follow them. I mean, really, we should be following after Christ. Like Paul said, he didn't just say follow me. He said follow me as I follow Christ.
Yeah,
So what he didn't want them to necessarily go after him, but he's just saying I'm just an example. But ultimately, look at him. Don't look at
yeah.
me.
And if you really read Paul's writings, he's got an attitude, you know? He can be a little sarcastic and a little snarky, and so Paul's not perfect. There is nobody who's perfect other than Jesus. And so let's get over that. And I think that gives us a little bit of freedom for our own selves to be okay with the fact that we might not be as good as we'd like to be, but we're on a journey together. We're all going to keep doing it till we stand before Jesus someday.
Is somebody that wears many hats as a husband, a father, a business leader. Sometimes it can be hard to juggle all these different things. So how do you maintain like a healthy balance between all these different things that are going on in your life?
Yeah, this comes back to that margin conversation we started with a little earlier. I tried for years to create a world of work-life balance. I try to teach it to my clients, and we really figured out there's no such thing as work-life balance. There is a thing called work-life integration, where you just try and be one person everywhere. And if I'm one person at work and one person at home, and I've got to flip back and forth, it's exhausting. And so I go to work and I amp up to be this little tyrant just so I can be able to do my job. Well, that tyrant comes home sometimes, and
Hmm.
that doesn't help your marriage. Or if you're having problems at home and you're not able to be who you want to be at home and you go to work, you feel defeated. So you don't bring your A game there. Be one person everywhere. And I learned that when I surrendered my heart to Christ in 94. I was 2 different very different dudes, 2 different places, but I really learned and experienced what it was like just be one person everywhere. And that freed me up to be able to be the same guy at every moment. I didn't have to switch the gears at any time. So then we start looking at, okay, so if I'm just one person everywhere, whether I'm working or I'm at home, I'm still me. Then I can pop in and out easily. If it's 8 o'clock at night and someone from work calls, I go, hey, what's up? Yeah, yeah, I'll take care of it tomorrow. All right, see you. Bye. I don't freak out that they're calling me at night and have to amp up to be a jerk. In the same way, if I'm at work and my wife calls me, I don't go, what do you want? I'll be home in 6 hours. I talk to my wife because I love her. And so we learned to be one person everywhere. But then it really comes back now to margin because when we live in overload, we're not getting as much productivity. It's really about getting more done with less effort. That's productivity. And that only comes from margin, where you create a world without overload. So, what we focus on these days is creating a life that has margin in it, where we make better decisions, we're more productive, we're able to get things done in a better time frame. And then we just load up the most important things first, and the other stuff doesn't get done. And that is where you end up getting what you get done, and that's productivity, and is all really comes down to is focus and prioritization.
Now, you've had a unique journey, right? You discovered a lot of things along the way, and I don't know if there was ever a time in your life where you were saying, whether it was before you came to Christ or even after you came to Christ, where you said, "All right, what is my purpose? What am I here for?" Right? Because
Mm,
I think a lot of people ask that question and they say, "I want to make an impact in the world in some way."
yeah.
Right? So once they've understood like all this that you're saying as far as accountability, all these things are like, "Okay, I got that, but now what?"
Where do I
Like
go?
how do
Where
I
do I
just
start?
do
Yeah.
something
Yeah.
important?
Don't do something. Don't do something. First, figure out who you are. You know, I I I think that without purpose, every decision is just as good as another. When you have purpose, you can go, "Oh, that's way better." And I was able to define my personal purpose about 10 years ago. I read a book by Cheryl Batchelder. She was the CEO of Popeye's Chicken, and she turned that company around using servant leadership principles. In the back part of her book, she walks you through how to define your personal purpose in life. So that's probably the easiest, cleanest description of how to define your personal purpose I've ever seen. So, Dare to Serve Leadership is where I found that. And so, when I figured out my purpose, which is to help people remove the obstacles that keep them from being their best, that's my personal purpose in life. My ultimate purpose is to honor God so that more people come to know Christ.
Mm,
My second purpose to that is to love my family and serve them well. And then my personal purpose is to the world around me, which is to be able to help people remove the obstacles that keep them from being their best. So now when I look at a job that I do for a living, can I live out my purpose in my job? Yes. As I look at my money, how do I use my money to live out my purpose? If I'm never available because I work so hard, I can never make time to be with someone, how can I help them remove the obstacles that keep them from being their best if I can't make time for them? So I have to have my own company, or you have to have a job that allows you to not have to work super late every night, where you can have time to go and to be with people. And you have to run your business in such a way that you can have time to talk with people. The purpose is what really enables you to see how to focus on what, how to prioritize what, and how to stay focused on it. But that really does come down to purpose.
yeah, so like the what and the who, right? It seems like from what you're saying, that's pretty much the same for all of us, right? Just the overall big thing, right? Honoring God, loving him, loving people. But the how, right? That's where it's different for everybody.
I think your purpose drives you to the how because it became so evident when I knew my purpose, and I was a marketing guy all my career. And at I don't know what year it was, 12 years ago, I learned about these peer groups, meeting with a guy to talk about marketing. And he told me what these peer groups were like, and I thought, "Hey, that's my personal purpose in life. I wanna do that." And it was very clear, I need to stop doing what I'm doing for a living and go do that because that is the fulfillment of my purpose. So I think it becomes clear in opportunities. Not everyone's purpose is to open up an orphanage in the plains of Nairobi. You know, your ministry could be in a welding shop in Vermont. Y It's just about where God uses you. Isn't that the coolest thing about God? He takes
Yeah.
all the goofy, short, skilled, inept weirdos of the world and says, "I'm gonna reach the world through them." You know? And he puts us in the middle of the muck and mire of the whole world we live in, and he says, "Just go be a light. That's all you gotta do. Just let who I am shine through you, and I'll take care of all the work." I don't save anybody. You don't save anybody, but we can be the light that draws them to Christ, and he can save them. And I think that's where knowing your purpose and being willing to make choices on your career, your time, your money, all that stuff. How do I use that to live out my purpose? It becomes so evident, you just can't not do it.
Ultimately, when it's all said and done, what's the one thing you would say to people uh if they want to know how can they overcome some of the excuses that we talked about today? How can they overcome excuses and distractions that hinder accountability in their lives?
I think it's when you get to a place where you just realize you're sick of it. You know, we could have lived another whatever number of years in debt. We could have got by, you know, we could keep going another year. But when you get to a place that the pain of where you are is worse than the pain of where you're going to go, you'll change. And for us, it wasn't the life we wanted. Be honest with yourself. This is what I want my life to look like. That's why we put the satisfaction assessment in the book.
Mhm.
This is the way I want my life to look like. Here's where it is today. I want to be there. And when you really have the passion to live the life that you really want and you really want it, you'll change. And it's going to be a journey either way. You can either live your life as a victim who is miserable and frustrated all your life, or you can go and work really hard to be a victorious person who doesn't make excuse, blame, say they can't, or wait and hope. And it's going to be a lot of work either way. But when you have no power and no authority and you're a victim, you're just screwed. But when you take back the power and authority, you have the power to change everything in your life. And that to me is exciting. That's hope. So I'd rather own a really hard journey to be a victor than to stay stuck in a hard journey as a victim. And the choice is really up to you. It's going to be hard either way. But I found that by owning it and chasing the solution I really want, there's joy and peace and contentment. And I like that better.
Yeah. Yeah, and you mentioned so in your book, so you have this assessment. Is this something that is done like on paper? Is it something that's done digitally? Like how does it
Yeah, you
work?
could do it online. You could just go for free. And we didn't want to have to you go to nobodycaresbook.com and right there in the resource tab is the satisfaction assessment. We don't charge you for it and we don't even ask for your information. It's yours. We want you to have it for free because we really want you to think, am I living the life I want? And if not, what am I going to do about it? And then look and find, am I blaming? Am I making excuses? Am I saying I can't? Am I just going to wait one more year to think it gets better next year? And be aware of the traps that hold you back and so that assessment is for free, and that's the catalyst. That's the part where if you're really, really honest, I mean, really honest, this is what I thought my marriage was gonna be like. This is what it is today. This is what I thought my health would be like. This is what it is today. And if you're really, really honest, then you can now assess and go, okay, what do I want to do about it? That's where the journey begins. And the rest of the book helps you find the tools to get through that.
Okay, awesome, awesome. And so, where can people? What's the best place for people to find your book? Is it on your website or where?
Yeah, we're on Barnes& and Noble and Amazon and Target and all those Walmart, but we'd like you to buy it from us. What we'll do is we want you to join our community. We wanna hear your story. We wanna see your satisfaction assessment. We wanna work with you and encourage you. I answer every email I get through the website. So we want you to come to nobodycaresbook.com and buy the books from us. We'll send it off to you with a note included, sign the book, all that good stuff. And then I wanna hear from you as you're going through your journey. I wanna see what your assessment looks like. I created a unique URL for your podcast. So if they go to nobodycarespod.com, I will send them a copy of my book for free. They just got to fill out the contact form and put in the code word conversations. If they put in the code word, I'll know it came from your podcast, and then I'll mail out a copy of the book. I mean, if you could afford it, go buy it. They still have a business. But if you can't afford it, I'll mail it to you. The first 2 people who fill out the contact form, I'll be happy to ship you a copy of the book.
I think that what you had to share today is going to help a lot of people. And I like that, as you mentioned, having the approach of not just, not being so religious, like religious in the negative sense. Religion
Yeah.
in and of itself is not a bad thing, right? The Bible talks about what good religion is, but
Helping
in
widows and
yeah,
orphans, and yeah.
yeah, but in the sense of I don't know. I think just not seeing God as real, right? Not seeing this walk as a real thing, but just as some kind of moral obligation versus like this exciting life that God wants us to experience.
Yeah. It is not an obligation. It is a gift from God. It is awesome. And if you aren't digging your walk with the Lord, you're not doing it right. If you're not having joy and fun and enjoying talking to God every day, you're doing it wrong. Go talk to someone, ask, seek, and you'll find. Read the Bible. There's a million videos. Watch some of this stuff. Get out there and really soak it in and enjoy your faith. Jesus said, I came to give you joy that's abundant, abundant joy. And if you're not having peace and joy, you're doing it wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. And my prayer is that more people after seeing this or hearing this today will have a greater understanding of that.
That's
To,
true.
maybe stop taking themselves so seriously, maybe, and start taking God more seriously,
Yeah,
you
right
know,
on.
and yeah, tapping into the life that only he can provide. So,
Yeah.
yeah, definitely think that you gave more people a reason to seek after God. So I'm really thankful to have you on today.
Thank you so much. This was fun.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. And in the future, if you have a new book or anything else that's coming up, it would be great to have you on again.
Well, have me up in New York to do a workshop in your area. We'll fill up a big room and we'll do a half day workshop on accountability. Well, it'll be fun.
Oh yeah, yeah, no, that would be awesome.
All right. Let's
Okay.
make it.
All right, thanks a lot.
Thank you.